Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday, September the 3rd. And as we like to do once a week, we're chatting with our good friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda. Bill, welcome. It's great to have you back.
Well, it's a privilege to be back, and we are now in the in the world that we are, the political world. It's basically a new year,
That's
because
it.
Labor Day has always been, traditionally at least, the start of the new political year.
You know, Bill, you and I keep elevating ourselves. Last week I said it was an honor to have you, and now you say it's a privilege.
Yeah.
So what are we doing next? I can't think of another word to do next week. I got to think of another one next week. So
Well,
let me,
we'll, we'll find a word. We'll say it. It's a Lincoln to be. It's a
that's right. Yeah,
Lincoln to be here.
right. No, yeah. Well, we'll have to think of a good one because I've already said honor and you've already said privilege. So those two don't count anymore. So
Right.
so I've got maybe elevate
Elevate.
myself. Yeah,
Yes.
there you go.
Is-
All right. Well,
w-
let's begin. Yesterday, September the 2nd, 1945, the 80th anniversary of the end of, well, the Japanese portion of the war. At least the European portion had ended before, but the Japanese surrendered formally, I guess, there in, I guess it was Tokyo Bay, where
Yes.
they did it, and it was obviously one of the most important days of the 20th century. But by coincidence, Bill, I'm just going to mention this. I don't know if you know this. I'm just going to bring this up. The year before, September 2nd, 1944, that was the year that a young George Bush was shot down in the Pacific. And on this day in 1944, he was picked up by a submarine. He had been in
Yes.
the water for several hours, and exactly a year before. So I just thought that was
Oh, that
an
was. I mean,
amazing coincidence there.
it is an amazing coincidence. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was actually, ironically, what launched his political career,
Yes,
because he was a legitimate war hero.
that's right, and it really, I guess, elevates the importance of World War II because think of all the men who served. George Bush, Gerald Ford, John Kennedy, of course.
Yes.
Dwight Eisenhower, of course, and I think Richard Nixon served too. I'm not sure in what. I think he was in the Pacific in some
He was
form.
in the Pacific. I don't recall if he
Yeah,
actually saw combat, but he was there. I mean, he did wear a uniform.
right. And then of course Ronald Reagan performed
Well,
a
yeah.
slightly different function, but
Yes.
I'm sure he was probably seen by a lot of Americans in the movies those days talking about the war effort. But anyway, I just thought the number of men who have a connection to World War II, from Eisenhower really to Bush, that had a connection to, and maybe the only other example like that would have been the Civil War or the Revolutionary War, Bill.
Well, yes. Well, when I was growing up, I'm in the in between generation. But World War II was the war.
Right,
It was always going to be there were, and it was the basis of so many sentences we spoke, before the war, after the war, and
right,
nobody had to ask what war are you referring to.
right.
I mean, that was the main event of my parents' lives, and to a certain degree, mine as well, because, having been born just slightly before the war, uh, uh, you felt it. You felt it as a little boy. I remember my first memory of any kind, in life, was the memory of American troops doing their exercises on Miami Beach,
Hmm,
and we were down there, and the army had taken over many of the hotels. They didn't have enough barrack space,
right.
and so they did the outdoor exercises on Miami Beach.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes the younger generation, and I think that's one of the points you were making in the article that you wrote at Urgent Agenda. I think the effort that war took, in every way, and not
Oh
just
yes,
militarily, but what it did back home with the involvement. I mean, everybody was involved in that war. That was a war effort, literally.
That was exactly the right term, the war effort, and it was the one that was used, and the involvement of women.
Yes,
Rosie the Riveter, they called her, and that women predominated in the production of aircraft in California. They were very, very important.
that's right. So 80 years now. 80 years is one of those anniversaries where a lot of people start forgetting
Oh
because
yes,
I mean, basically, most of the men who served obviously have passed away. It's a little bit like D-Day. And so you end up remembering this, and your hope is that the current generation will remember it and pass it on. That's your hope.
yeah,
That the history books, as you mentioned in your article, that the history books will keep talking about it. Because as time passes, obviously less people, are touched by it, I guess.
yes, of course,
And so
and that's natural. That's
and
natural.
that's
That's
totally natural. Yeah.
passing of the generations. I don't think most young people today associate September 2nd with anything
Right.
because they weren't taught it, and to a degree that it's understandable. 80 years is a long time. When I was in school, 80 years before was something we didn't even know about,
Right.
let alone
Well,
being taught about.
80 years before
Excuse
19,
me.
I'm going to do a little quick math here, but
Yeah.
80 years before 1945 would have been 1865, right? Or just well, no, not
About
quite,
yes.
not in 75 years it would have been,
Yes.
but
Well,
still,
well,
that's a
well,
long, that's a long
well,
time. You're talking
yeah,
75th anniversary of Lincoln's assassination in 1945,
yeah, yeah.
so that's a
Well,
long time.
when I was growing up, there was still World War. No, I'm sorry, Civil War veterans that were
Sure.
still alive, and they appeared on television. They appeared on talk shows and on game shows, and they were. President Roosevelt had a some kind of a an honorary or honors meeting, and he said, "We welcome here the blue and the gray." I mean, as if it was as if it was yesterday.
Right.
But yes, the Civil War still had great impact because, after all, it was a civil war. It was a war among Americans.
Right. And as you say, the memories were still fresh. I mean, they were still grandchildren or
Oh
even
yes,
veterans of the war. And I always thought it was interesting. I think you mentioned this one time also when we were recalling President Roosevelt. You mentioned how many of the monuments in the South he actually, was there. I mean, he initiated them or started them
yes,
or participated in it because he thought it would be a way of bringing people together by
yes,
remembering that part of the Southern history. So, but as you mentioned in your article, and that's the point I really like about it, is you want these days to be remembered. Yes, time passes and people forget. That's natural, but you can still remember them by telling your kids about it.
yes. Well, that's a very important part of it. I think even more important than the schools is the
Yes,
family. I think if you go back 80 years, many kids who are just growing up today had grandparents, great grandparents alive then and participating. I
right.
mean, a kid today, his or her grandparents, not the parents necessarily, but grandparents, great grandparents, were participants in World War II
Right, or Korea or whatever. Yeah,
or
it depends.
Korea.
It
Yes.
it depends what age group you're in. But yeah, I mean, but I think it's important, and I'm going to cite a small example here in my family. One of the things that my parents did, and I'm so grateful for this, is that they made sure that we in our family living in another country that we didn't forget our roots or we didn't forget why we came here.
That's right.
So, and they would always bring that up, it was part of our conversations, and very often at dinner time or just when I was talking to my father or whatever, we would always talk about that.
Yes.
And at the time, it all seemed not that important. But now that they're gone and I look back at it, there's a lot of things that I know about Cuba that I learned from them
Yes. Hmm.
that I would
Hmm.
have never learned in a history book, but I learned it from them. and that's that to me that's very important. So I'm hoping that, as you mentioned in your article, that these days are they are remembered in the future as much as well, maybe not as much, but at least that we talk about them, Bill.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, let's come to the present because we've got some real problems in
Yeah,
in the present. And one of the biggest problem is the crime in these cities, and I specifically Chicago. I It frustrates me, Bill, when Democrats want to get into a game of statistics and they want to argue, well, it's not really as bad as it was last year.
yes,
And last year they killed 300. This year they killed 250. Therefore, hey, we're headed in the right direction. Um, okay, technically, I guess we are, but 250 is still a lot of people, and and
and
I just
a lot of children in that too.
that's right. And I get frustrated because I see them just. To me, it's all about Trump, and it's like how many black people in Chicago have to die before they finally say, you know what, we may hate Trump, but the guy's got a point. We got to do something about this crime. So let's figure out a way of working with him
That's
and
right.
at least fix the problem. You don't
Yes.
have to like the guy, but you can fix the problem, Bill.
Yes, and that is the position that is now taken by the mayor of Washington, D.C., who has made herself into quite a heroine by working with Trump to reduce crime in D.C. It is now down dramatically. And
Yeah.
she, I think, whatever her motive was, she has become a highly respected mayor who, if D.C. ever becomes a state, she's going to be the first governor.
Yes, I think you're right, and even beyond that, she may have a career in a cabinet position or something down the road.
Yes.
I don't think that Washington D.C. is going to become a state, nor do I think it should be. But that's another segment. But I do think she. I mean, I can see her being named to a cabinet position for having had the courage to stand up and say, you know what, we got to fix this problem. I may not like the guy. I may not want to go out to dinner with him. I'm not going to send him a Christmas card, but he's got a point about the crime.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, that's it. And you made the point. I mean, how many children have to die before somebody says we cannot accept this? We are their
Yes.
parents, and we are responsible for them. I mean, how many? What was it? 8 people died in Chicago over the weekend.
Yeah, I think it's
And
7 or 8 and like 50 shot.
yes, and many of them probably maimed for life, and yet the governor gets on television and with an absolutely straight face attacks Trump for wanting to reduce crime, and he and makes this weird speech in which he says it really isn't about crime; it's about Trump having his own motives and for deflecting attention from his failures elsewhere. I mean, it was weird because we now have a record of what his work does to reduce crime in D.C., and it has worked. You would think
Right.
that the Democrats, as you point out, would have said, "Let's work with him. Let's show that we are uh, the, the party willing to work and do this together, and that we are the people who should be running the cities because look at the great work we have done with Trump."
Right. And if like you just said, it would help him politically. Um, the governor of Illinois wants to run for president, and I'm pretty sure one of the things they're going to do is attack him for what's happening in Chicago.
Oh, sure.
And that's fine. That's politics. But he could deflect all of that very easily by resolving the problem. And I'm not an expert in Chicago, but I do have a pretty good idea of where the crime is. The
Oh,
crime is
yes.
in a particular section. It's not
Yes.
like the whole city has to be occupied, as they like to say. I mean,
Yeah.
well, that's another stupid word. He's going to occupy the city.
Yeah.
Give me a
Yes.
break. Give me a right.
He wants to try to compare Trump to Hitler. You
Right. Yeah.
know,
He's
he
going
wants
to.
to become the
Yeah, I mean, he's going to occupy the city. Come on. All he's going to do is probably bring in 500 750 troops. And frankly, I would prefer the governor of Illinois to do that, but
Yes.
have 500, 700 troops, put them in that section of the town, and that's the end of the crime.
Well, yes, and it's been proved that that works. That works when there is cooperation. Now, Trump can do that and call for no cooperation with the National Guard if it's brought in, and then you have a real crisis because that would be something Americans would look at and say, "My God, what are you people in Illinois really doing?" And I think it's one of those. They're now called 80-20
Right.
subjects, where you've got 80% of the people of the United States on one side, and 20% on the other side, and the Democrats are choosing the 20%, and they're doing this in issue after issue.
Right. They always go for the 20.
Oh yes, that's
I
right.
mean, and they don't realize they're falling in a trap.
Of
But
course.
I just think that, I keep looking at these statistics, and, the country went through all kinds of, and correctly so, rejection to what happened in Minneapolis when 2 kids were killed.
Yes.
2 kids were killed. And of course, that was horrible. But here in Chicago, 5 people, 7 people in the last 2 weeks. And how many injured, how many in the hospital? The other question I asked, Bill, who's paying these hospital bills?
Well, I don't. That's a very good question. I don't know if the state pays the bills or if private insurance or Medicare. That's an excellent question, and we should ask it. Who is paying those bills?
Well, I
Uh,
mean, most of these people are brought into the emergency, so they're going to have to be taken care of.
yes,
They're not going to be asking them for insurance.
yes,
And many of these individuals are in a poor section of town. Maybe they have some kind of coverage. I don't know. But I keep thinking of the cost to these hospitals.
yes. Well, I'm sure they have some kind of a system. Almost every community does. I think that when they're brought into an emergency room. In fact, I know that in our nearby hospital, there is a sign up in the emergency room saying you are covered by some plan.
Right.
Please see the attendant or whatever about this, and this will be explained to you, because I'm sure that people who come into the emergency room, if they're not knowledgeable, will worry. Who's going to pay for it? Am I going to get a bill for $100,000?
Right. No, but I mean, even if the city gets stuck with the bill, it's still the city,
Yes.
and the city doesn't have any money.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
mean,
yes. Well, cities are going bankrupt,
right. Well,
and,
sure.
and
And that's the other point, that these people, they're driving these cities bankrupt. They're destroying these cities. By the way, one of our listeners, our good friend Sally, brought up an excellent point about the mayor of Chicago. I just wanted to share this with you, that the mayor of Chicago, who's a real treat. I mean, this guy is really a lunatic. I mean, this guy is like lunatic beyond.
yes,
He said that Chicago was built by slaves, and Sally points out that Illinois was a free state.
yes,
They never had slaves.
yes.
So maybe it was built by, I don't know, somebody, I'm sure, but it was not slaves.
Well, that's a game that's played all the time. It is certainly true that Washington, D.C., that Washington was partially built by people who were enslaved. That is enshrined in the history of Washington and is commemorated. But no, Illinois, I think Illinois may have been built by criminals. I really don't know, but
I don't know, but it wasn't built by slaves. That much I can tell you.
no. But I think
That was not I don't think that was the way Illinois happened. And I'm
no.
pretty sure that Illinois was part of the Northern Army when they
Yeah.
fought the
Oh
war.
yes.
But again, my frustration with these people, Bill, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but my frustration is that they're not doing anything, or in the name of hating Trump. Let me put it this way: in the name of hating Trump, they are basically screwing their own people. And
Yes.
forgive me for saying it that way, but
Yes.
that's what it
Oh,
is. I mean,
absolutely.
yeah.
They are committing some of their population to death, and that's not
Yes.
an exaggeration. And they don't seem to care. And that is the thing that shocks me. They come up with a figure each week of how many people were shot in Chicago over the weekend, how many
Right.
died, how many of the children, and they don't seem to care. And I don't understand how anybody in public life can take that position.
Well, I know, and that's what's frustrating about it. That's what's beyond the human cost. It's the idea that politicians don't care. And in a normal world, I'm sure that the one thing that any mayor, the last thing he wants to have is 5 people killed every weekend, Bill.
That's exactly right, and that is, of course, a great fear here in New York, where if we commit a partial suicide, as I think we're going to, well, not we, because I live north of New York, but the people in the city, by electing this nutcase, who is from the Democratic Socialists of America or some similar group, who is on record as wanting to defund the police, wanting to try new forms of punishment that don't involve punishment. And soon we'll hear that criminals really aren't criminals. They're victims of society, and mostly victims of Trump. They're
Right.
victims of Trump. It is beyond me. It's some we have had denial in the past, where the Democratic Party has denied that there was a crime wave, and
Well,
and, and that was something that was during Bill Clinton's time, and Clinton finally had to say, "Look, we got to do something about this," and
right.
that's when he put the figure out of 100,000 new police that he was going to provide through federal funds, and I think they were in fact hired, and it was a good thing for the cities.
Yeah, you
Uh,
never thought that you would look back at Bill Clinton as the voice of reason,
Now, yeah.
but honestly, he looks better and better all the time compared to these Democrats. I sometimes wonder what Clinton must be thinking sitting there at home watching this
I think
and
he must
say,
be very frustrated.
he must be, because this is absolutely an absolutely crazy situation. Well, now you were talking about New York, so let's go to that topic
Yeah.
because they have an election coming up. And now the latest rumor, it's a rumor, but the latest rumor is that the Trump administration is going to offer Mr. Adams a position to get him out of the race. Again, it's a rumor. I don't know if it's true, but what exactly is that going to do? Because he has less than 10% of the vote, and that still means that Mandani gets 41, which is what he seems to be getting in every poll,
Yeah.
and then the other is divided by the two others. So I don't see that changing the mix, Bill.
Well, I think the situation in New York has become desperate. I
I think
really do,
so.
because nobody can really understand how this professional nutcase, with very, very strong uh, 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 views that are anti-American, that are anti-Semitic, that are anti-police, uh, that it really are contrary to the whole nature and history, positive history of the United States, how he can be elected to be the mayor of our most important city, and apparently elected, if these predictions come true, by a considerable amount. I mean, the city is really in the position of committing suicide.
I think we got to ask the question, Bill, what are they smoking up there?
Yes, well,
Because
in New York, well,
yeah, because whatever they're smoking, it's not good for them. But one interesting thing, Bill, that I think you mentioned this before. Um, the very few people are actually going to vote in this election. So I'm guessing that as many as 70% of the people who live in New York City are not even going to vote. So
yes.
he's going to be elected by a small number of people. So a lot of people are either not paying attention, they don't care, they don't think anything's going to happen. So maybe a lot of people just don't care, Bill.
Well, it's an off-year election, and
Right.
this is the most off-year elections, and that's the not. It's not a midterm election; it's a first-term election. Um, there are no national races. There are some statewide races, but many of the races that will be decided in November are city races, and the big deal there is New York City. Everybody
Mhm.
is going to be looking to New York City, the great American city, and watching it, as we've said here, begin to commit suicide. And nobody can figure out where this guy came from, to the point where he has all this. He is not a poor man, by the way.
No,
The
he's
incoming
not.
mayor comes from a very wealthy family.
Right?
He himself is very wealthy. His wife is wealthy. He grew up under remarkable circumstances, and I think Gracie Mansion, where the mayor lives, may be inadequate for him. He may come in and say, "Well, I won't live in a dump like this. I
Yeah.
mean, who do they think I am?"
Right. His
Uh,
mother might say, this house is not good enough for us."
no, of course not. Of
Yeah.
course not. And apparently, there is a family history politically, which is not wonderful, not one that usually people would brag about. But this is it's an anomaly, and I think many people are overly optimistic when they say, "Well, he'll get into office and he'll change." He may change, but he may change for the worse.
Right, exactly. But it's also fascinating is he's become a topic in every other Democrat election. For example, in New Jersey, the guy running for governor is making a big issue out of the fact that the Democrat running for governor is not saying anything about Mandami. In Virginia, the Democrat running for governor is avoiding Mandami. So these
Yes,
people, they don't want to touch this thing, and they're hoping that it goes away. But it's not going to go away. He will be, if elected, Bill. He is going to be the cover photo of every political magazine the week of
oh,
the election.
absolutely,
Nobody's going to
absolutely.
care who won the election in New Jersey. Nobody's going to care who won the election in Virginia. It's all going to be about this guy. He's going to be the face of the party, Bill.
That's right. And if and when he is elected, there are things people should look at. The first thing is the attitude of the police.
Yes,
I mean, he's going to, like every mayor, he's going to depend on the police to
sure.
keep New York at least reasonably sane. I don't know how the police are going to react to him. Now, if he were smart, which I don't think he is, he would keep the current police commissioner, who that's Police Commissioner Tish, who is a wonderful commissioner, very popular with the police officers. But of course, she is also pro police and anti crime, and that doesn't describe the new mayor. No, but I don't think he's smart enough to keep her. I really don't. And then you have to say, well, what are the police going to do? I think you're going to get a lot of police officers who are going to retire, who are going to leave. We're going to have a tremendous shortage of police, and the police he does bring in will probably be hand selected as being willing to really almost prostitute themselves to be on the New York City police force. It's going to be a very, at first it'll be a talkative time. People will talk about it a lot, and then it will dawn on New Yorkers, this is the guy who's running the city.
Right. That's right.
And they're going to say, well, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my children? What's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen to my job? I mean,
Right.
he's you're going to have companies rushing to get out of New York City. And what's going to happen to all those people? They'll all be on welfare and on unemployment insurance. And of course, what's going to happen to institutions in New York, like the great museums, the Broadway theater? These institutions are going to be taken for tremendous losses.
Yes. No, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty in the Big Apple, as they say. And maybe they'll have to call Batman and
I
Robin.
think he will.
Maybe,
Well, you could do worse.
right, right. They'll call Batman and get him out of the cave, in his car and save New York. But it is just an absolute, it's a travesty to think of this happening in New York. I mean, I know New York is liberal,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
my
oh yeah.
gosh,
Oh
but
yes.
this is beyond liberalism. This
Oh,
is
very.
this is nutty, nutty, nutty stuff to say the least. Well, Bill, there's another topic I like you to talk about, and very briefly, and that is this apparent connection between Russia, Ukraine, and China. Something is going on. Well, not Ukraine, I should say, between Russia and China. This union that they're talking about. Apparently, they had a meeting in the last few days. What are you hearing about that, or do you think it's important?
Well, it's always important, but I think they're getting ahead of the story, which is used to be a sin in journalism, and now it's a commendable action. I think they're beginning to get so theoretical. We don't know what the story is internationally right now. There obviously are many talks going on. Whether they will amount to anything, nobody really actually knows. And there is seems to be on the other side, the side that rational people here would call the anti-American side, that may result in new alliances formed, and for us, a more complicated view of the enemies of the United States. And I think Trump is convinced this may happen, where you do get countries on the other side that were always anti-American, but now they might unite in some kind of an alliance. The problem there being is some of them hate each other. So
Right. Well, that's the thing.
actually, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any great love lost between China and Russia. I don't think there's any great love lost between Iran and some of the European countries that are on Russia's side. Uh, Nobody really knows. Alliances can be formed in strange ways. Remember that during the Second World War, one of our strongest allies was the Soviet Union,
Right.
and we
And
didn't necessarily love it, but we needed their contribution of troops, which was
right.
substantial and very important to
Right.
victory. I mean,
That's right.
and and to reducing American casualties in the war. So
Right.
we don't know. We're getting ahead of the story. I would love to know what is going to happen by the end of the year, when now Trump is talking about, well, we think most of these problems are going to be solved by the end of the year. That's a little late. He has made commitments to the American people that if some of these negotiations he's involved in do not materialize soon, he will take direct action. And in the case of Europe, that means direct economic sanctions against Russia, direct action against uh, North Korea, which is helping Russia, but with troops, by the way,
Right.
and direct action against those countries that are helping Russia, either directly or indirectly. Let's see if he does it. I think,
Right.
I've said before that the person who will be most affected by all these international events that are happening is going to be Donald Trump.
Right.
Either these,
Well,
either the he'll go ahead.
I was going to say he made a big mistake, I think, during the campaign, saying he fixed the problem in 24 hours. And I
Yes,
think that raised
that's
expectations. It was a
it.
foolish
Sure
thing to
did.
say. I
It
know what he meant. He wasn't talking about 24 hours, but he said it would fix it very fast. And I think he's realizing now that uh, 24 hours is sort of like the story of the Bible, 7 days. It wasn't really 7 days like
no,
we think of as 7 days. It was a little longer. And I just think that in retrospect, he probably shouldn't have put it that way, but he did. And now the problem is on his desk, as they say. Well, Bill, I want to thank you as always for your time. And thank you so much for joining us today to talk about these topics.
my pleasure.
And we will we will do it again next week. Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it very much. I think that I think that the shows are going to be increasingly interesting to our audience as the time goes on, because the time between now and the end of this year is going to be filled with drama, some
Yes, I
kind of drama. We can't predict it exactly, but you just get that feeling in the air that things are coming to a head.
yeah. Well, the other thing too is that with President Trump, something is always happening.
Yes,
That's the other thing. Like yesterday, we blew up that ship in the Caribbean. The ship
yes,
carrying. I mean, stuff like that creates news day, and then you have these judges issuing these opinions
Yes.
that honestly they confuse the heck out of me,
Yeah.
because I'm sitting there saying, okay, a judge says that President Trump cannot send troops into California, but President Trump never said he was putting down a rebellion. What he
That's
said
right.
was that he was helping protecting federal buildings and ICE. So I mean, it was very limited mission.
Yes.
And the judge is saying that it's he never said that he was putting down a rebellion. So I don't know. The Supreme Court Chief Justice Roberts has got to put his foot down and say, hey guys,
Yes.
he got elected, you didn't, and
Yeah.
let's do your
Yeah.
jobs. But anyway, Bill, have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.
Looking forward to it.
All right, thank you so much. Our good friend, Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda, as we do our week in review and look back at the week. I think the topic that we spent the most of the time with is this issue of crime in the city, and how is it possible that the city of Chicago tolerates all of this in the name of what? I mean, they may not like Trump. That's fine. They don't have to like Trump. But I hope they don't like seeing these people being killed every Sunday or Saturday. So anyway, crazy stuff in the name of hating Trump. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.